Book 13th of The Prelude by William Wordsworth, edited by William Knight. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by NoelBadrian. Book 13th. Imagination and Taste, How Impaired and Restored. Concluded. From nature doth emotion come, and moods of calmness equally are nature's gift. This is her glory. These two attributes are sister horns that constitute her strength. Hence genius, born to thrive by interchange of peace and excitation, finds in her his best and purest friend. From her receives that energy by which he seeks the truth. From her that happy stillness of the mind, which fits him to receive it when unsought. Such benefit the humblest intellects partake of, each in their degree. 'Tis mine to speak what I myself have known and felt. Smooth task, for words find easy way, inspired by gratitude and confidence in truth. Long time in search of knowledge did I range the field of human life, in heart and mind benighted. But, the dawn beginning now to reappear, 'twas proved that not in vain I had been taught to reverence a power that is the visible quality and shape and image of right reason, that matures her processes by steadfast laws, gives birth to no impatient or fallacious hopes, no heat of passion or excessive zeal, no vain conceits, provokes no quick turns of self-applauding intellect, but trains to meekness and exalts by humble faith, holds up before the mind intoxicate with present objects and the busy dance of things that pass away, a temperate show of objects that endure, and by this course disposes her, when over fondly set, on throwing off encumbrances, to seek, in man, and in the frame of social life, whate'er there is desirable and good, of kindred permanence, unchanged in form and function, or, through strict vicissitude of life and death, revolving. Above all, were re-established now those watchful thoughts, which, seeing little worthy or sublime, in what the historian's pen so much delights to blazon, power and energy detached from moral purpose, early tutored me to look with feelings of fraternal love upon the unassuming things that hold a silent station in this beauteous world. Thus moderated, thus composed, I found once more in man an object of delight, of pure imagination, and of love. And, as the horizon of my mind enlarged, again I took the intellectual eye for my instructor, studious more to seek great truths than touch and handle little ones. Knowledge was given accordingly. My trust became more firm in feelings that had stood the test of such a trial, clearer far my sense of excellence, of right and wrong. The promise of the present time retired into its true proportion. Sanguine schemes, ambitious projects, pleased me less. I sought for present good in life's familiar face, and built thereon my hopes of good to come. With settling judgments now of what would last and what would disappear, prepared to find presumption, folly, madness, in the men who thrust themselves upon the passive world, as rulers of the world, to see in these, even when the public welfare is their aim, plans without thought, or built on theories vague and unsound, and having brought the books of modern statists to their proper test, life, human life, with all its sacred claims of sex and age and heaven-descended rights, mortal, or those beyond the reach of death, and having thus discerned how dire a thing is worshipped in that idol proudly named the wealth of nations, where alone that wealth is lodged, and how increased, and having gained a more judicious knowledge of the worth and dignity of individual man, no composition of the brain But man, of whom we read, the man whom we behold with our own eyes, I could not but inquire, not with less interest than heretofore, but greater, though in spirit more subdued. Why is this glorious creature to be found one only in 10,000? What one is, why may not millions be? What bars are thrown by nature in the way of such a hope? Our animal appetites and daily wants, are these obstructions insurmountable? If not, then others vanish into air. Inspect the basis of the social pile. Inquire, said I, how much of mental power and genuine virtue they possess who live by bodily toil, labour exceeding far their due proportion, under all the weight of that injustice which upon ourselves entail. Such estimate to frame, I chiefly looked, what need to look beyond, among the natural abodes of men. Fields with their rural works recalled to mind my earliest notices, with these compared, the observations made in later youth, and to that day continued. For the time had never been when throes of mighty nations and the world's tumult unto me could yield. How far, soe'er transported and possessed, full measure of content, but still I craved an intermingling of distinct regards, and truths of individual sympathy, nearer ourselves. Such often might be gleaned from the great city, else it must have proved to me a heart-depressing wilderness. But much was wanting. Therefore did I turn to you, ye pathways and ye lonely roads, sought you enriched with everything I prized, with human kindnesses and simple joys. Oh, next to one dear state of bliss, vouchsafed, alas, to few in this untoward world, the bliss of walking daily in life's prime, through field or forest, with the maid we love, while yet our hearts are young, while yet we breathe nothing but happiness, in some lone nook, deep vale, or anywhere, the home of both, from which it would be misery to stir. Oh, next to such enjoyment of our youth, in my esteem, next to such dear delight, was that of wandering on from day to day, where I could meditate in peace, and cull knowledge that step by step might lead me on to wisdom, or, as lightsome as a bird, wafted upon the wind from distant lands, sing notes of greeting to strange fields or groves, which lacked not voice to welcome me in turn. And, when that pleasant toil had ceased to please, converse with men, where if we meet a face, we almost meet a friend, on naked heaths, with long, long ways before, by cottage bench, or well spring, where the weary traveller rests. Who doth not love to follow with his eye the windings of a public way? The sight, familiar object as it is, hath wrought on my imagination since the morn of childhood, when a disappearing line, one daily present to my eyes, that crossed the naked summit of a far-off hill, beyond the limits that my feet had trod, was like an invitation into space, boundless, or guide into eternity. Yes, something of the grandeur which invests the mariner who sails the roaring sea through storm and darkness, early in my mind, surrounded too the wanderers of the earth, grandeur as much, and loveliness far more. Awed have I been by strolling bedlamites, from many other uncouth vagrants, past in fear, have walked with quicker step. But why take note of this, when I began to inquire, to watch and question those I met, and speak without reserve to them? The lonely roads were open schools in which I daily read with most delight the passions of mankind, whether by words, looks, sighs, or tears revealed. There saw into the depths of human souls, souls that appear to have no depth at all to careless eyes, and now convinced at heart how little those formalities to which with overweening trust alone we give the name of education have to do with real feeling and just sense, How vain a correspondence with the talking world proves to the most, and call to make good search, if man's estate, by doom of nature yoked with toil, be therefore yoked with ignorance. If virtue be indeed so hard to rear, and intellectual strength so rare a boon, I prized such walks still more, for there I found hope to my hope, and to my pleasure peace and steadiness, and healing and repose to every angry passion. There I heard from mouths of men obscure and lowly, truths replete with honour, sounds in unison with loftiest promises of good and fair. There are who think that strong affection, love, known by whatever name, is falsely deemed a gift, to use a term which they would use, of vulgar nature, that its growth requires retirement, leisure, language purified by manners studied and elaborate; that whoso feels such passion in its strength must live within the very light and air of courteous usages refined by art. True is it, where oppression worse than death salutes the being at his birth, where grace of culture hath been utterly unknown, and poverty and labour in excess from day to day preoccupy the ground of the affections, and to nature's self oppose a deeper nature, there, indeed, love cannot be, nor does it thrive with ease among the close and overcrowded haunts of cities, where the human heart is sick, and the eye feeds it not, and cannot feed. Yes, in those wanderings deeply did I feel how we mislead each other above all, how books mislead us, seeking their reward from judgments of the wealthy few who see by artificial lights, how they debase the many for the pleasure of those few, effeminately level down the truth to certain general notions for the sake of being understood at once, or else, through want of better knowledge in the heads that framed them, nattering self-conceit with words that, while they most ambitiously set forth extrinsic differences, the outward marks whereby society has parted man from man, neglect the universal heart. Here, calling up to mind what then I saw, a youthful traveller, and see daily now in the familiar circuit of my home, here might I pause, and bend in reverence to nature, and the power of human minds, to men as they are men within themselves. How oft high service is performed within, when all the external man is rude in show, not like a temple rich with pomp and gold, but a mere mountain chapel, that protects its simple worshippers from sun and shower. Of these, said I, shall be my song. Of these, if future years mature me for the task, will I record the praises, making verse deal boldly with substantial things. In truth and sanctity of passion, speak of these, that justice may be done, obeisance paid, where it is due. Thus haply shall I teach, inspire, through unadulterated ears, pour rapture, tenderness, and hope. My theme, no other than the very heart of man, as found among the best of those who live, not unexalted by religious faith, nor uninformed by books, good books, though few, in nature's presence. Thence may I select sorrow, that is not sorrow, but delight, and miserable love, that is not pain to hear of, for the glory that redounds therefrom to humankind and what we are. Be mine to follow with no timid step where knowledge leads me. It shall be my pride that I have dared to tread this holy ground, speaking no dream, but things oracular, matter not lightly to be heard by those who to the letter of the outward promise do read the invisible soul, by men adroit in speech, and for communion with the world accomplished. Minds whose faculties are then most active when they are most eloquent, and elevated most when most admired. Men may be found of other mould than these, who are their own upholders, to themselves encouragement, and energy and will, expressing liveliest thoughts in lively words, as native passion dictates. Others, too, there are among the walks of homely life, still higher, men for contemplation framed, shy and unpractised in the strife of phrase, meek men, whose very souls perhaps would sink beneath them summoned to such intercourse. Theirs is the language of the heavens, the power, the thought, the image, and the silent joy. Words are but under agents in their souls. When they are grasping with their greatest strength, they do not breathe among them. This I speak in gratitude to God, who feeds our hearts for his own service, knoweth, love us, when we are unregarded by the world. Also, about this time did I receive convictions still more strong than heretofore, not only that the inner frame is good and graciously composed, but that, no less, nature for all conditions wants not power to consecrate if we have eyes to see the outside of her creatures, and to breathe grandeur upon the very humblest face of human life. I felt that the array of act and circumstance and visible form is mainly to the pleasure of the mind what passion makes them, that meanwhile the forms of nature have a passion in themselves that intermingles with those works of man to which she summons him, although the works be mean, have nothing lofty of their own, and that the genius of the poet hence may boldly take his way among mankind wherever nature leads, that he hath stood by nature's side among the men of old, and so shall stand for ever. Dearest friend, if thou partake the animating faith that poets, even as prophets, each with each, connected in a mighty scheme of truth, have each his own peculiar faculty, heaven's gift, a sense that fits him to perceive objects unseen before, thou wilt not blame the humblest of this band who dares to hope that unto him hath also been vouchsafed an insight that in some sort he possesses, a privilege whereby a work of his, proceeding from a source of untaught things, creative and enduring, may become a power like one of nature's. To a hope not less ambitious, once among the wilds of Sarum's plain my youthful spirit was raised. There, as I ranged at will the pastoral downs, trackless and smooth, or paced the bare white roads, lengthening in solitude their dreary line, Time with his retinue of ages fled backwards, nor checked his flight until I saw our dim ancestral past in vision clear, saw multitudes of men, and, here and there, a single Briton, clothed in wolf-skin vest, with shield and stone-axe, stride across the wold. The voice of spears was heard, the rattling spear, shaken by arms of mighty bone, in strength long moulded of barbaric majesty. I called on darkness, but before the word was uttered, midnight darkness seemed to take all objects from my sight, and lo, again, the desert visible by dismal flames. It is the sacrificial altar, fed with living men. How deep the groans! The voice of those that crowd the giant wicker thrills the monumental hillocks, and the pomp is for both worlds, the living and the dead. At other moments, for through that wide waste 3 summer days I roamed, where'er the plain was figured o'er with circles, lines, or mounds that yet survive, a work as some divine, shaped by the Druids, so to represent their knowledge of the heavens, and image forth the constellations, gently was I charmed into a waking dream, a reverie, that with believing eyes, where'er I turned, beheld long-bearded teachers, with white wands uplifted, pointing to the starry sky, alternately and plain below, while breath of music swayed their motions, and the waste rejoiced with them and me in those sweet sounds. This for the past, and things that may be viewed or fancied in the obscurity of years, from monumental hints, And thou, O friend, pleased with some unpremeditated strains, that serve those wanderings to beguile, hast said, that then and there my mind had exercised upon the vulgar forms of present things, the actual world of our familiar days, yet higher power had caught from them a tone, an image, and a character, by books not hitherto reflected. Call we this a partial judgment? And yet why? For then we were as strangers, and I may not speak thus wrongfully of verse, however rude, which on thy young imagination, trained in the great city, broke like light from far. Moreover, each man's mind is to herself witness and judge. And I remember well that in life's everyday appearances I seemed about this time to gain clear sight of a new world, a world too that was fit to be transmitted, and to other eyes made visible, as ruled by those fixed laws whence spiritual dignity originates, which do both give it being and maintain a balance, an ennobling interchange of action from without and from within, the excellence, pure function, and best power, both of the object seen and eye that sees. End of Book 13th.
Book 14th of The Prelude by William Wordsworth, edited by William Knight. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Martin Geeson. Book 14th. Conclusion. In one of those excursions, may they ne'er fade from remembrance, through the northern tracts of Cambria, ranging with a youthful friend, I left Beddgellet's huts at couching time, and westward took my way, to see the sun rise from the top of Snowdon. To the door of a rude cottage at the mountain's base we came, and roused the shepherd who attends the adventurous stranger's steps, a trusty guide, then, cheered by short refreshment, sallied forth. It was a close, warm, breezeless summer night, one dull and glaring, with a dripping fog, low hung and thick, that covered all the sky. But undiscouraged, we began to climb the mountain side. The mist soon girt us round, and after ordinary travellers' talk with our conductor, pensively we sank each into commerce with his private thoughts. Thus did we breast the ascent, and by myself was nothing either seen or heard that checked those musings, or diverted, save that once the shepherd's lurcher, who among the crags had to his joy unearthed a hedgehog, teased his coiled up prey with barkings turbulent. This small adventure, for even such it seemed in that wild place and at the dead of night, being over and forgotten, on we wound in silence as before. With forehead bent earthward, as if in opposition set against an enemy, I panted up with eager pace, and no less eager thoughts. Thus might we wear a midnight hour away, ascending at loose distance each from each, and I, as chanced, the foremost of the band, when at my feet the ground appeared to brighten, and with a step or two seemed brighter still, nor was time given to ask or learn the cause, for instantly a light upon the turf fell like a flash, and lo, as I looked up, the moon hung naked in a firmament of azure without cloud, and at my feet rested a silent sea of hoary mist. 100 hills their dusky backs upheaved all over this still ocean, and beyond, far, far beyond, the solid vapours stretched, in headlands, tongues, and promontory shapes, into the main Atlantic, that appeared to dwindle, and give up his majesty, usurped upon, far as the eye could reach. Not so the ethereal vault. Encroachment none was there, nor loss, only the inferior stars had disappeared, or shed a fainter light in the clear presence of the full-orbed moon, who from her sovereign elevation gazed upon the billowy ocean, as it lay all meek and silent, save that through a rift, not distant from the shore whereon we stood, a fixed, abysmal, gloomy breathing place, mounted the roar of waters, torrents, streams innumerable roaring with one voice, heard over earth and sea, and in that hour, for so it seemed, felt by the starry heavens. When into air had partially dissolved that vision, given to spirits of the night and 3 chance human wanderers, in calm thought reflected, it appeared to me the type of a majestic intellect, its acts and its possessions, what it has and craves, what in itself it is, and would become. There I beheld the emblem of a mind that feeds upon infinity, that broods over the dark abyss, intent to hear its voices issuing forth to silent light in one continuous stream. A mind sustained by recognitions of transcendent power, in sense conducting to ideal form, in soul of more than mortal privilege. One function above all of such a mind had nature shadowed there, by putting forth, mid circumstances awful and sublime, that mutual domination which she loves to exert upon the face of outward things, so moulded, joined, abstracted, so endowed with interchangeable supremacy, that men least sensitive see, hear, perceive, and cannot choose but feel. The power which all acknowledge when thus moved, which nature thus to bodily sense exhibits, is the express resemblance of that glorious faculty that higher minds bear with them as their own. This is the very spirit in which they deal with the whole compass of the universe. They from their native selves can send abroad kindred mutations, for themselves create a like existence, and whene'er it dawns created for them, catch it, or are caught by its inevitable mastery, like angels stopped upon the wind by sound of harmony from heaven's remotest spheres. Them the enduring and the transient both serve to exalt. They build up greatest things from least suggestions, ever on the watch, willing to work and to be wrought upon. They need not extraordinary calls to rouse them. In a world of life they live, by sensible impressions not enthralled, but by their quickening impulse made more prompt to hold fit converse with the spiritual world, and with the generations of mankind spread over time, past, present, and to come, age after age, till time shall be no more. Such minds are truly from the Deity, for they are powers, and hence the highest bliss that flesh can know is theirs, the consciousness of whom they are, habitually infused through every image and through every thought, and all affections by communion raised from earth to heaven, from human to divine. Hence endless occupation for the soul, whether discursive or intuitive, Hence cheerfulness for acts of daily life, emotions which best foresight need not fear, most worthy then of trust when most intense. Hence, amid ills that vex, and wrongs that crush our hearts, if here the words of Holy Writ may with fit reverence be applied, that peace which passeth understanding, that repose in moral judgments, which from this pure source must come, or will by man be sought in vain. Oh, who is he that hath his whole life long preserved, enlarged this freedom in himself? For this alone is genuine liberty. Where is the favoured being who hath held that course unchecked, unerring, and untired, in one perpetual progress smooth and bright? A humbler destiny have we retraced, and told of lapse and hesitating choice, and backward wanderings along thorny ways. Yet, compassed round by mountain solitudes, within whose solemn temple I received my earliest visitations, careless then of what was given me, and which now I range, a meditative, oft-suffering man, do I declare, in accents which, from truth deriving cheerful confidence, shall blend their modulation with these vocal streams, that whatsoever falls my better mind, revolving with the accidents of life, may have sustained, that however misled, never did I, in quest of right and wrong, tamper with conscience from a private aim, nor was in any public hope the dupe of selfish passions, nor did ever yield wilfully to mean cares or low pursuits, but shrunk with apprehensive jealousy from every combination which might aid the tendency, too potent in itself, of use and custom to bow down the soul under a growing weight of vulgar sense, and substitute a universe of death for that which moves with light and life informed, actual, divine, and true. To fear and love, to love as prime and chief, for there fear ends, be this ascribed, to early intercourse, in presence of sublime and beautiful forms, with the adverse principles of pain and joy. Evil, as one is rashly named by men who know not what they speak. By love subsists all lasting grandeur, by pervading love. That gone, we are as dust. Behold the fields in balmy springtime, full of rising flowers and joyous creatures. See that pair, the lamb and the lamb's mother, and their tender ways shall touch thee to the heart. Thou callest this love, and not inaptly so, for love it is, far as it carries thee. In some green bower rest, and be not alone, but have thou there the one who is thy choice of all the world. There linger, listening, gazing, with delight impassioned. But delight how pitiable, unless this love by a still higher love be hallowed, love that breathes not without awe, love that adores, but on the knees of prayer, by heaven inspired, that frees from chains the soul, lifted, in union with the purest, best of earth-born passions, on the wings of praise, bearing a tribute to the Almighty's throne. This spiritual love acts not, nor can exist, without imagination, which in truth is but another name for absolute power and clearest insight, amplitude of mind, and reason in her most exalted mood. This faculty has been the feeding source of our long labour. We have traced the stream from the blind cavern whence is faintly heard its natal murmur, followed it to light and open day, accompanied its course among the ways of nature, for a time lost sight of it, bewildered and engulfed, then given it greeting as it rose once more in strength, reflecting from its placid breast the works of man and face of human life. And lastly, from its progress have we drawn faith in life endless, the sustaining thought of human being, eternity and God. Imagination having been our theme, so also hath that intellectual love, for they are each in each, and cannot stand individually. Here must thou be, O man, power to thyself, no helper hast thou here. Here keepest thou in singleness thy state. No other can divide with thee this work, no secondary hand can intervene to fashion this ability. 'Tis thine, the prime and vital principle is thine, in the recesses of thy nature, far from any reach of outward fellowship. Else is not thine at all. But joy to him, oh joy to him who here hath sown, hath laid here the foundation of his future years. For all that friendship, all that love can do, all that a darling countenance can look or dear voice utter to complete the man, perfect him, made imperfect in himself, all shall be his. And he whose soul hath risen up to the height of feeling intellect shall want no humbler tenderness. His heart be tender as a nursing mother's heart. Of female softness shall his life be full, of humble cares and delicate desires, mild interests and gentlest sympathies. Child of my parents, sister of my soul, thanks in sincerest verse have been elsewhere poured out for all the early tenderness which I from thee imbibed. And 'tis most true that later seasons owed to thee no less, for spite of thy sweet influence and the touch of kindred hands that opened out the springs of genial thought in childhood, and in spite of all that, unassisted, I had marked, in life or nature, of those charms minute that win their way into the heart by stealth, still to the very going out of youth, I too exclusively esteemed that love, and sought that beauty, which, as Milton sings, hath terror in it. Thou didst soften down this over sternness. But for thee, dear friend, my soul, too reckless of mild grace, had stood in her original self too confident, retained too long a countenance severe, a rock with torrents roaring, with the clouds familiar, and a favourite of the stars. But thou didst plant its crevices with flowers, hang it with shrubs that twinkle in the breeze, and teach the little birds to build their nests and warble in its chambers. At a time when nature, destined to remain so long foremost in my affections, had fallen back into a second place, pleased to become a handmaid to a nobler than herself, when every day brought with it some new sense of exquisite regard for common things, and all the earth was budding with these gifts of more refined humanity, thy breath, dear sister, was a kind of gentler spring that went before my steps. Thereafter came one whom with thee friendship had early paired. She came, no more a phantom to adorn a moment, but an inmate of the heart, and yet a spirit there for me enshrined to penetrate the lofty and the low, even as one essence of pervading light shines in the brightest of 10,000 stars, and the meek worm that feeds her lonely lamp couched in the dewy grass. With such a theme, Coleridge, with this my argument, of thee shall I be silent. O capacious soul, placed on this earth to love and understand, and from thy presence shed the light of love, shall I be mute ere thou be spoken of? Thy kindred influence to my heart of hearts did also find its way. Thus fear relaxed her overweening grasp. Thus thoughts and things in the self-haunting spirit learnt to take more rational proportions. Mystery, the incumbent mystery of sense and soul, of life and death, time and eternity, admitted more habitually a mild interposition, a serene delight in closelier gathering cares, such as become a human creature, howsoe'er endowed, poet, or destined for a humbler name. And so the deep enthusiastic joy, the rapture of the hallelujah sent from all that breathes and is, was chastened, stemmed, and balanced by pathetic truth, by trust in hopeful reason, leaning on the stay of Providence, and in reverence for duty, here, if need be, struggling with storms, and there strewing in peace life's humblest ground with herbs, at every season green, sweet at all hours. And now, O friend, this history is brought to its appointed close, the discipline and consummation of a poet's mind, in everything that stood most prominent, have faithfully been pictured. We have reached the time, our guiding object from the first, when we may, not presumptuously I hope, suppose my powers so far confirmed, and such my knowledge, as to make me capable of building up a work that shall endure. Yet much hath been omitted, as need was. Of books how much, and even of the other wealth that is collected among woods and fields, far more. For nature's secondary grace hath hitherto been barely touched upon, the charm more superficial that attends her works, as they present to fancy's choice apt illustrations of the moral world, caught at a glance or traced with curious pains. Finally, and above all, O friend, I speak with due regret, how much is overlooked in human nature and her subtle ways, as studied first in our own hearts, and then in life among the passions of mankind, varying their composition and their hue where'er we move, under the diverse shapes that individual character presents to an attentive eye. For progress meet along this intricate and difficult path, whate'er was wanting, something had I gained, as one of many schoolfellows compelled, in hardy independence, to stand up amid conflicting interests and the shock of various tempers, to endure and note what was not understood, though known to be. Among the mysteries of love and hate, honour and shame, looking to right and left, unchecked by innocence too delicate, and moral notions too intolerant, sympathies too contracted. Hence, when called to take a station among men, the step was easier, the transition more secure, more profitable also, for the mind learns from such timely exercise to keep in wholesome separation the two natures, the one that feels, the other that observes. Yet one word more of personal concern. Since I withdrew unwillingly from France, I led an undomestic wanderer's life, in London chiefly harboured, whence I roamed, tarrying at will in many a pleasant spot of rural England's cultivated vales or Cambrian solitudes. A youth, he bore the name of Calvert, it shall live, if words of mine can give it life, in firm belief that by endowments not from me withheld good might be furthered, in his last decay, by a bequest sufficient for my needs, enabled me to pause for choice, and walk at large and unrestrained, nor damped too soon by mortal cares. Himself no poet, yet far less a common follower of the world, he deemed that my pursuits and labours lay apart from all that leads to wealth, without some hazard to the finer sense. He cleared a passage for me, and the stream flowed in the bent of nature. Having now told what best merits mention, further pains our present purpose seems not to require, and I have other tasks. Recall to mind the mood in which this labour was begun, O friend. The termination of my course is nearer now, much nearer. Yet even then, in that distraction and intense desire, I said unto the life which I had lived, Where art thou? Hear I not a voice from thee which 'tis reproach to hear? Anon I rose as if on wings, and saw beneath me stretched vast prospect of the world which I had been and was, and hence this song, which like a lark I have protracted in the unwearied heavens singing, and often with more plaintive voice to earth attempered and her deep drawn sighs, yet centring all in love, and in the end all gratulent, if rightly understood. Whether to me shall be allotted life, and with life power, to accomplish aught of worth, that will be deemed no insufficient plea for having given the story of myself, is all uncertain. But, beloved friend, when looking back thou seest, in clearer view than any liveliest sight of yesterday, that summer, under whose indulgent skies upon smooth Quantock's airy ridge we roved unchecked, or loitered mid her sylvan combes, thou in bewitching words, with happy heart, didst chant the vision of that ancient man, the bright-eyed mariner, and rueful woes did utter of the Lady Christabel, and I, associate with such labour, steeped in soft forgetfulness the livelong hours, murmuring of him who, joyous hap, was found, after the perils of his moonlight ride, near the loud waterfall, or her who sate in misery near the miserable thorn. When thou dost to that summer turn thy thoughts, and hast before thee all which then we were, to thee, in memory of that happiness, it will be known, by thee at least, my friend, felt, that the history of a poet's mind is labour not unworthy of regard. To thee the work shall justify itself. The last and later portions of this gift have been prepared, not with the buoyant spirits that were our daily portion when we first together wantoned in wild poesy, but under pressure of a private grief, keen and enduring, which the mind and heart, that in this meditative history have been laid open, needs must make me feel more deeply, yet enable me to bear more firmly, and a comfort now hath risen from hope that thou art near, and wilt be soon restored to us in renovated health, when, after the first mingling of our tears, 'mongst other consolations, we may draw some pleasure from this offering of my love. Oh, yet a few short years of useful life, and all will be complete, thy race be run, thy monument of glory will be raised. Then, though too weak to tread the ways of truth, this age fall back to old idolatry, though men return to servitude as fast as the tide ebbs, to ignominy and shame by nations sink together, we shall still find solace, knowing what we have learned to know, rich in true happiness, if allowed to be faithful alike in forwarding a day of firmer trust, joint labourers in the work, should Providence such grace to us vouchsafe, of their deliverance surely yet to come. Prophets of nature, we to them will speak a lasting inspiration, sanctified by reason, blessed by faith. What we have loved others will love, and we will teach them how, instruct them how the mind of man becomes 1,000 times more beautiful than the earth on which he dwells, above this frame of things, which, mid all revolution in the hopes and fears of men, doth still remain unchanged, in beauty exalted, as it is itself of quality and fabric more divine. End of Book 14th. End of the Prelude by William Wordsworth, edited by William Knight.